There is a moment in life that feels like standing in a vast silent room after the furniture has been removed. No echoes, no direction, no familiar weight, just space. And most people panic here. They call it emptiness. They call it depression. They call it loss of motivation, loss of meaning, loss of self. But what if this feeling is not a failure of your life? What if it is a clearing? What if the emptiness you feel is not a void, but a womb? You were never taught how to sit with nothingness. You were taught to fill it immediately, with noise, with work, with people, with stimulation, with identity, because silence threatens the structures you've built to survive. Yet every real transformation in human history, personal or collective, has begun with collapse, with disorientation, with the terrifying sense that what once worked no longer does. This is not coincidence. This is psychology. This is alchemy. This is the law of becoming. When meaning leaves, it is not always because life has become empty. Often, it is because the old meaning has expired, and expired meaning cannot be revived. It can only be replaced, but replacement requires space. So emptiness arrives first. You feel it when achievements stop satisfying you, when routines feel hollow, when conversations skim the surface of something you can't quite name. You wake up and the world looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same. You move, but there's no pull. You succeed, but there's no resonance. And the mind immediately turns this into a problem to solve. What's wrong with me? Why don't I feel driven anymore? Why does nothing excite me the way it used to? Because excitement was never meant to last forever. It was meant to lead you somewhere. And now you've arrived at the edge of that place. This emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the pause between identities. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He knew that when the psyche outgrows its current form, it dismantles it from the inside. Not gently, not politely, but thoroughly. First, meaning drains away. Then motivation collapses. Then certainty dissolves. And only after that, something new can emerge. But here is where most people fail. They run. They rush to refill the space with substitutes. Another goal, another relationship, another distraction, another version of themselves that feels familiar enough to wear. And in doing so, they interrupt the process. They choose comfort over transformation. You are here because something in you did not run. Something in you stayed. Even if you didn't know why. Even if it felt unbearable. Even if you told yourself you were lost. You weren't lost. You were between. Between who you were and who you can no longer be. Between what defined you and what no longer fits. Between an old life and a new one that has not yet taken shape. This is the most misunderstood phase of human development, and the most sacred. In ancient traditions, this was called the dark night. In psychology, it is the death of the ego structure. In real life, it feels like nothing matters anymore. But listen carefully, nothing matters yet, because what used to matter is gone, and what will matter hasn't arrived. And that gap, that unbearable gap, is where authenticity is born. Emptiness strips away what you were pretending to care about. It dissolves ambitions that were fueled by fear, comparison, or validation. It exposes relationships that were sustained by habit rather than truth. And in that exposure, you feel naked, unmotivated, uncertain, untethered. Good, because only an untethered psyche can reorient itself honestly. You are no longer chasing what you were told to want. You are no longer driven by outdated incentives. You are no longer hypnotized by goals that once kept you moving but never fulfilled you. The emptiness is doing its job. It is detoxing you from a life that no longer aligns with your depth. This phase does not ask you to act. It asks you to listen, to notice what still has energy and what doesn't, to feel what repels you now and what quietly attracts you, to stop forcing meaning where there is none. This is not laziness. This is recalibration. The psyche is reconfiguring itself around a deeper center, and deeper centers move slower. They don't shout. They don't seduce. They don't beg for attention. They wait. You may feel like you are falling behind while others are moving ahead, but you are not on the same timeline anymore. You have entered a different layer of life, a layer where speed gives way to substance, where clarity replaces intensity, where purpose is no longer something you chase, but something that organizes you from within. This is why emptiness often arrives after achievement, after heartbreak, after burnout, after loss, because those experiences crack the old shell, and what comes after cracking is not immediately new growth. It is space. Dark, quiet, uncertain, but fertile. In this space, the false self starves. The self built on proving, pleasing, performing. And when it weakens, the true self finally has room to breathe. You will notice subtle shifts. You tolerate less noise. You crave fewer people. You become allergic to superficiality. Not because you are bitter, but because you are recalibrating to truth. You may feel lonely in ways you never did before, because you are no longer surrounded by distractions pretending to be connection. This loneliness is not punishment. It is initiation. It is teaching you the difference between being surrounded and being understood, between being busy and being alive, between being admired and being aligned. And slowly, very slowly, something begins to stir beneath the emptiness. A curiosity without urgency, an interest without obsession, a pull that doesn't feel desperate. This is how real purpose arrives, not as a lightning bolt, but as a quiet gravity. You are not meant to fill the emptiness. You are meant to let it shape you, to let it strip away what was never truly yours, to let it humble you, to let it deepen you, because what is coming next cannot live in a cluttered inner world. What is coming next requires space. That is why the emptiness came first. You are not being punished. You are being prepared, prepared to build a life that fits your nervous system, prepared to choose meaning that does not collapse under pressure, prepared to love without losing yourself, prepared to act without betraying your soul. Stay with the not knowing, stay with the quiet, stay with the discomfort of not having answers, because answers that arrive too quickly are usually borrowed, and what is coming to you must be yours. The emptiness will not last forever, but what grows out of it will. And one day, not suddenly, not dramatically, you will realize that the space you once feared was the very thing that made room for something honest, grounded, and alive. Something wonderful, something real, something that could only arrive after everything false had finally fallen away. And as you remain inside this space, this quiet, unfamiliar territory, your relationship with time begins to change. The urgency dissolves first. You no longer feel compelled to rush toward the next version of yourself. You no longer feel the pressure to explain what you're becoming or justify why you feel different. You stop narrating your life as if someone else were grading it. This is what happens when the ego loosens its grip. The ego measures life in milestones. The deeper self measures life in alignment, and alignment cannot be rushed. In this emptiness, you may notice a strange paradox. The less you chase meaning, the more meaning begins to reveal itself. Not in grand revelations, but in subtle recognitions. You notice what you can no longer tolerate. You notice what drains you immediately. You notice what feels wrong in your body before your mind tries to rationalize it. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is refinement. You are shedding the numbness that once helped you survive. And when numbness leaves, everything feels more intense at first. Emotions rise faster. Silence feels louder. Solitude feels deeper. But this is not regression. This is reawakening. The emptiness sharpens your perception. It makes you honest in ways comfort never did. You begin to see where you were living on autopilot, where you said yes out of habit, stayed out of fear, pursued goals out of inertia, and now those patterns collapse. This collapse feels disorienting because identity is built on repetition. When repetition stops, the identity tied to it dissolves. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the structure that once held you. And structure, when it outlives its usefulness, becomes a cage. The psyche knows this. That is why it creates emptiness. Emptiness is the signal that the old architecture has been dismantled. But here is a part no one tells you. New architecture is not assembled immediately. First, you sit among the ruins. You grieve not always consciously, sometimes as fatigue, sometimes as irritability, sometimes as a lack of desire. This grief is not for what you lost, but for what you gave up trying to be. And that grief deserves respect. You are not meant to bypass it with positivity. You are not meant to hustle your way out of it. You are meant to feel it until it finishes its work. Because unfinished grief hardens into cynicism. But grief that is felt transforms into wisdom. You may feel detached from people who once felt central. You may feel uninterested in conversations that revolve around status, drama, or surface-level ambition. This does not mean you are superior. It means your nervous system is no longer stimulated by what once distracted it. Your appetite is changing. And appetite always changes before direction does. This is the phase where many people misdiagnose themselves. They think they are depressed when they are actually outgrowing. They think they are unmotivated when they are actually reorienting. They think they are empty when they are actually making space. Real depression feels heavy, constricting, suffocating. This emptiness feels open, uncomfortable, yes, but open. It feels like standing at the edge of something vast without instructions. And that is exactly where new meaning is born. You are learning how to be without reference points, without constant affirmation, without external scaffolding. This is individuation in its rawest form. You are becoming someone who can choose from the inside rather than react from conditioning. And this takes time, not calendar time, psychological time, which cannot be forced. During this phase, your task is not to figure it out. Your task is to not interrupt the process, to resist the temptation to numb, to resist the urge to perform normalcy, to resist the pressure to immediately replace what has fallen away. You don't fill fertile soil before something new has time to root. You protect it, and you protect this emptiness by listening carefully to what it is asking of you. Less noise, less comparison, less explanation, more honesty, more solitude, more patience with not knowing. You may find yourself drawn to things that once seemed insignificant: walking, reading, silence, nature, reflection. These are not escapes. They are invitations back to your own rhythm. The deeper self speaks quietly. It does not compete with stimulation. It waits for conditions where it can be heard. And emptiness creates those conditions. You will notice slowly that something within you is reorganizing. Your values shift. Your priorities rearrange. Your definition of success simplifies. You care less about being impressive, more about being at peace. You care less about winning, more about being real. This is not resignation. This is maturity. And maturity often feels like loss before it feels like freedom, because it requires letting go of illusions that once gave you momentum. But momentum without meaning eventually leads to collapse. You are being spared that collapse. By going through it consciously now, the emptiness is not a mistake. It is the clearing before the arrival, and what arrives will not be loud. It will not announce itself. It will not feel like salvation. It will feel like recognition, like remembering something you forgot you knew. And when it begins to take shape, you will understand why this space had to exist first, why everything familiar had to fall away, why nothing could be forced. Because what is coming cannot live where old identities once ruled. It needs room, and you have made that room by staying when everything in you wanted to flee. There is strength, and strength like this does not go unrewarded. It transforms quietly, permanently. And as the transformation continues, slow, unseen, irreversible, you begin to notice something that once felt impossible. You are no longer afraid of the emptiness, not because it disappeared, but because you recognize it. It has become familiar, almost companionable, a quiet field rather than a void, a pause rather than a punishment. You realize the emptiness never asked you to suffer. It asked you to stop pretending. Stop pretending you were fulfilled when you were merely occupied. Stop pretending you were certain when you were only conditioned. Stop pretending you were fine when something essential was quietly asking for change. This is where honesty becomes non-negotiable. Not honesty with the world, but with yourself. You begin to tell the truth internally, even when it disrupts comfort. I don't want this anymore. This doesn't matter to me now. I've outgrown this version of myself. These admissions are not dramatic. They are grounding. Each one removes a layer of inner friction. And with each layer removed, energy returns. Not explosive energy, not manic motivation, but clean energy, the kind that doesn't need hype, the kind that doesn't burn you out, the kind that flows when action aligns with truth. You begin to feel curiosity again, not the anxious kind, but a gentle pull. You notice certain ideas linger longer in your mind, certain images, certain questions, certain possibilities begin to orbit your awareness without demanding immediate answers. This is how the future first announces itself. Not as a plan, but as a resonance. You don't know where it leads yet. You don't know what form it will take, but it feels alive. And that aliveness is unmistakable after a long period of emptiness. You understand now why this phase required silence. Because what is emerging does not respond well to pressure. It cannot be rushed into productivity. It cannot survive constant evaluation. It needs incubation. This is why so many people never reach it. They interrupt the process too soon. They mistake discomfort for danger. They mistake emptiness for failure. And they rebuild the same life again. You didn't. You stayed. And staying has changed you. You are more patient with yourself now, more discerning with others, less willing to trade depth for familiarity. You no longer need to fill every moment with meaning. You trust meaning to arrive when the structure is ready. You begin to sense when something is right, not exciting, not impressive, but right. It settles in your body differently. It doesn't create anxiety. It doesn't require justification. It simply fits. This is the signature of what is coming. It will not overwhelm you. It will not consume you. It will integrate with you because you are no longer trying to escape emptiness. You have allowed it to reshape you. And reshaped people build different lives, lives with fewer distractions and deeper commitments, lives where ambition is rooted in purpose, not fear, lives where relationships feel reciprocal rather than draining. You will notice that you are less reactive, less triggered by comparison, less disturbed by other people's timelines. You are no longer racing. You are moving with yourself, and that is why what is coming will last. It will not be a phase. It will not be a temporary high. It will be an extension of who you have become through this stillness. One day quietly you will wake up and realize the emptiness is gone. Not because you chased it away, but because it completed its work. It gave you back to yourself. And standing there, grounded and awake, you will see clearly. The emptiness was not the absence of meaning. It was the removal of what no longer meant anything. And what remains, what begins now, will feel simple, honest, and unmistakably yours. That is why you had to wait. That is why you had to feel empty first. Because something wonderful does not enter a life crowded with illusions. It enters a life that has made space for truth. And you have made that space by staying, and now, without fanfare, without announcement, you understand. The emptiness was never trying to break you. It was trying to quiet you. So you could hear what has been calling you beneath the noise. You see it clearly now. Nothing was taken from you. What left was already finished. What dissolved was already too small. What fell away did so because it could not travel with you any further. You were not abandoned by meaning. You were being repositioned for it. The silence you feared was not rejection. It was preparation. Preparation for a life that does not require performance. Preparation for connections that do not require self-erasure. Preparation for purpose that does not burn you alive just to keep you moving. You are no longer in a hurry to arrive anywhere else. You are no longer afraid of standing still, because standing still no longer feels empty. It feels open, and openness is where life enters. What comes next will not shout. It will not demand proof. It will not feel like rescue. It will feel like recognition, like meeting something that has been looking for you just as patiently as you have been waiting without knowing it. You did not lose your way. You cleared it. You did not fall behind. You stepped aside long enough for truth to catch up. And now, whatever begins from this space will be built on something unshakable. You, present, grounded, unafraid of quiet. The emptiness has done its work, and what fills this space now is not noise, not distraction, not borrowed meaning, but something wonderful, something real, something that could only arrive after everything false finally made room for it.